President Trump during a cabinet meeting on Monday at the White House. Tom Brenner, The New York Times, Washington. President Trump convened his cabinet on Monday in the hopes of kickstarting his stalled domestic policy agenda, and complained that Democrats in Congress are obstructing his efforts on tax reform, health care, and the confirmation of judicial nominees. The Democrats have terrible policy, Mr. Trump told reporters, flanked by Secretary of State Rex W. Tillerson and Jim Mattis, the Secretary of Defense. They are very good at, really, obstruction. He also lashed out, without naming them, at some Republicans in the Senate, members he accused of refusing to go along with their party. He appeared to be talking about failed votes to repeal the Affordable Care Act. There are some Republicans, frankly, that should be ashamed of themselves, Mr. Trump said, adding that most of the senators are really great people, but saying that you had a few people that really disappointed us. Mr. Trump offered support to Stephen K. Bannon, his former White House advisor, who has declared political war against members of the Republican establishment, including several senators like Mitch McConnell, the majority leader. Mr. Trump was scheduled to have lunch with Mr. McConnell at the White House on Monday. "Steve is very committed," Mr. Trump said. "He's a friend of mine, and he's very committed to getting things passed." The president said he understood Mr. Bannon's criticism of Republican senators who have stood in the way of the Trump agenda. "We are not getting the job done, and I'm not going to blame myself, I'll be honest. They are not getting the job done," he said, adding later, "I can understand where Steve Bannon is coming from." The president bragged that he is receiving tremendous accolades for his effort to cut taxes, and he expressed sadness at the loss of life in the Las Vegas shooting and in forest fires raging in California. "It's a very sad thing to watch," Mr. Trump said of the fires. For the first time since becoming president, Mr. Trump raised the prospect of widespread abuse of welfare payments and hinted that his administration would be making changes to the nation's welfare system. "People are taking advantage of the system, and then other people aren't receiving what they really need to live," Mr. Trump said. "We are going to be looking very strongly, therefore, for welfare reform. You'll be hearing about them very shortly," the president added. He did not say, specifically, what changes in the welfare system he would seek. Mr. Trump predicted that Democrats and Republicans would soon work together on a temporary fix for healthcare issues, and took credit for any cooperation because he ended taxpayer subsidies to insurance companies that lower co-payments. He also suggested that Congress should take on the issue of prescription drug prices, saying that companies often charge less in other countries for the same drugs. "Drug companies, frankly, are getting away with murder," Mr. Trump said. Later in the evening, Mr. Trump flew to South Carolina to speak at a fundraiser for Governor Henry McMaster, who is running for re-election next year and was an early and enthusiastic supporter of Mr. Trump's presidential campaign. Mr. Trump was accompanied on Air Force One by Representative Joe Wilson of South Carolina, and the president gave the lawmaker a shout-out at the Closet Door event, saying that Mr. Wilson had been a powerful voice in Congress, according to an article by the Post and Courier newspaper. "You know what I mean by powerful voice, right?" Mr. Trump said, according to the newspaper, an apparent reference to when Mr. Wilson shouted "You lie," while President Barack Obama delivered a speech about health care in 2009 to a joint session of Congress.